Play the video. The boardroom lights fade, voices hush in an instant. Her finger lands on the remote, sharp, impatient, unmoved by the murmurs. The big screen captures a moment. A man's broad back stood on his cheek, holding a trembling child from the shoulder, pressing a ruined jacket against her face. No sound, just silent footage. The woman at the head of the table leans in, lips thinning. Who let him in? Why is he here? Her assistant's eyes dart between her and the screen. Ma'am, the system flagged the access, recorded everything. This is the sequence. Another director coughs. The man's face, older than his years, flickers into clarity. He looks right at the camera, does not flinch. Your child could have died. His voice is low, even. She grips the edge of the table, shoulders locked. He meets her stare, unblinking, unmoved. You wanted a spectacle. Here it is. She opens her mouth to answer, but no words arrive. The silence stretches tight. That's the moment when every mask in the room drops. Some truths are only revealed when no one intends to see them. Stay until the very end. It started 2 weeks earlier on a morning so bright it burned. At precisely 10:14 a.m., Will Dempsey set down his battered lunch cooler at the edge of Lot C, swung his last length of rebar onto a pile, and leaned into the ache that had pulsed behind his left temple for hours. The city's new gateway project rose, half-skeleton, across 3 blocks of midtown glass, steel, orange mesh fencing, and rumor. Each day, Will's calloused hands built a little more of what he'd likely never afford to rent. 11 days until rent came due. The number banged inside his head like a stray hammer. A chorus of car horns pulsed from the street. Across the drive, between a row of idle pickup trucks, the tented white awning went up for the women who build Donors Luncheon. Silver transparent heels in the mud, waiters in black, and there she was, Dana Morrow, CEO of Luxity Urban Living, black suit, sharp cut. Her stride never broke for a puddle. She expected the world to harden underfoot. Her entourage parted as she stopped. One white patent leather pump landed square in new water-mixed dust. She looked first at Will, then at her assistant, and then at the brownish streak on her shoe. Someone get this cleaned now. Her voice didn't rise, it just commanded the air. The foreman, already too close, waved. Will, over here. 4 dozen eyes. Will removed his gloves slowly, thumb hooked through the torn seam. He stepped forward, took in the CEO, the crowd, and her muddy shoe. You're the labor here, aren't you? She said, not moving. I set rebar mostly, Will replied, voice level. She waggled her foot, not looking at him. Labor is labor, clean it. Laughter muffled, phones came out to record. The foreman looked at his feet. Will knelt, grasped a paper napkin from a server's tray, and without ceremony wiped the shoe once, gentle as a father would clean a scraped knee. There you are, ma'am. He straightened, returned the napkin to the tray. She turned on her heel. Try not to get the rest of them dirty. Next time do your job properly, she said, brisk and exact. Will murmured, always room for improvement, folding his gloves as if that were the only thing in the world. Lunch continued, the laughter did not. He turned, breathed once deep, and felt the old tension surge behind his eyes. The foreman caught Will's arm as he passed. Just keep your head down, Dempsey, first rule, right? Will nodded, yeah, first rule, but he knew that rules bent and some broke. Inside that laughter, something started shifting. Will clocked out at 5:30. His hands ached, so he flexed them twice before climbing the 4 flights to his apartment. On the 3rd step he paused, set his toolkit down, and juggled a stack of past-due envelopes. 11 days, every number in the pile had teeth. Inside, one window stuck at a quarter open. He heard the slow click of a key turning, and then his daughter's small voice carried in, Daddy. In here, Will pushed the fridge door open, checking for yesterday's mac and cheese before noticing the tiny silver compass lying atop a tower of coloring books. His daughter, Iris, 6, slipped inside, clutching the compass tight. She tilted her head, curious. You got dirt on your nail, does it hurt? He shook his head, not much, dirt means work done. She slid onto the counter, compass dangling from its frayed chain. Mom used to say you didn't like hurting. Will blinked once steady. She did. He rinsed a mug. In the reflection, the ghost of his wife, hair still damp from the lake, laughing over a sandwich. The brown glass bottle on the shelf carried the trace of her perfume, slow to fade after all this time. She had not worn it often. The day she dove after a stranger's child, she hadn't even expected to swim. Daddy, do you miss being able to fix everything? Iris asked, watching a loose thread on her shirt. He placed the mug gently on the table, careful not to let it clink. Air moved tight in his chest. Sometimes I do, Peanut. She handed him the compass. You can borrow it if you get lost. He smiled, wrote "Be clever, compass girl" on a napkin and folded it into her lunchbox. Every compass finds home, eventually, he said. It was a routine, these morning notes, never dramatic, sometimes just a doodle, sometimes an inside code only Iris would grin at. He checked the wall calendar, 11 red excess marked off. Rent, school payments in the margin. Iris chirped, "Did you know I told Mrs. Lang you're a superhero?" He crouched, tying her sneaker one-handed, voice steady. "You can tell her next week I'm just a regular guy who loves you." Her arms locked around his neck, compass digging into his shirt, steadying, grounding. We'll tuck a tip into the neighbor's mailbox, where an older woman's grocery list often lingered unfilled. At bedtime, Iris asked, voice muffled by sheets, "Do bad things mean you did something wrong?" We'll press the compass into her palm. You just keep going forward. In the dark, the city hummed outside. The scars he kept from other lives buzzed quietly. Tomorrow he'd start again. The penthouse windows at Luxity's apex caught the morning just as the city turned gold. Dana Morrow surveyed her empire through glass. Beneath her shoes, the city sprawled, 1,000 untidy connections she controlled. "Coffee, not scalding. 1 packet, not 2, she ordered, holding out her cup to her assistant, Neve. From the side, a trailing manager asked, "Schedule adjustment for Mr. Jensen, Miss Morrow." Dana didn't look up. "No changes. Move his meeting, not mine." She tapped her phone once. Her father's hospice number blinked on the screen. Last night's update hadn't changed. Unresponsive, prepare end-of-life care. A photo of him in younger days, strong-jawed, gray at the temples, suit crisp, sat propped against a document pile. She thumbed it back to the stack. At the bottom, a letter marked property tax lien, immediate response required. Her jaw tensed, she scrawled a signature. "Get the Capwell file, forward their appraisal to review." Neve set coffee to her right. "Your father's attorney called. He wants to schedule time, sooner than later." Dana exhaled through her nose, face set. "He'll have to wait, business first." She sipped, eyes flicking to the golden reflection. Too much of her life was spent in empty rooms, meals for one, wine half finished, TV set to no volume. When she noticed the silence, she would fill it with work. A calendar ping, the women who build luncheon. She debuilt her legend from these, make allies, outmaneuver rivals, stay in control. A vendor's email flashed, one contractor flagged for attention. Behavioral concern, Will Dempsey, late payment risk. Dana's mouth twitched. "Put him on warning, pull his placement from Block E," she said to Neve. Neve hesitated. "That's the single dad, his daughter's at Willow Street School." Dana's gaze narrowed. "Irrelevant, keep every variable checked, bad optics are expensive." Neve left, door closing quietly behind. Dana reached again for the photo. "You said always handle the problem first, Dad." She pressed the frame flat on the table. Another call rang. "Dana, it's Dr. Voss, about your father. We need you here by the weekend." Her fingers hovered over decline, then pressed accept. "I'll come tonight." Dana watched the skyline, no hesitation, only forward. Day 6 on the North Wing started with alarms, sirens, an orange plume, smoke. The shouts climbed over concrete as Will jogged to the fence. 10 feet beyond the barrier, a storage container burned, flames licking at the corner where dust, solvent, and plywood made a hungry mix. A mother's voice shrieked. Inside the temporary creche, a little girl with a pink cap banged against the locked gate. The foreman, 2 engineers, and lunch caterers shouted orders, none getting closer. Will vaulted the fence, knees bending with the shock. "Back up!" He scanned the seams, heat emanating in bursts. He wrapped his jacket tight, yanked a metal bar as makeshift lever, and jammed it under the rusted latch. He assessed with a glance, 20 seconds left before the wall went. The child screamed once, high and raw. He shouted, "It's not the fire yet, it's the vapors, cover your face." He grabbed his jacket, pressed it around her head, and pulled her close. He swung her out and into the arms of a panicked mother who cried thanks and clutched her trembling child. Will stepped out coughing smoke, nothing heroic in his gait. The site medic pushed over, pressing a stethoscope to the girl's back. The mother sobbed, "She's breathing." A young architect named Julian caught it all, camera, eyes, and heart racing. He watched as Will steadied himself against a post, coughed, then simply blended into the crowd. No grandstanding, just another day's grime on thick hands. Julian turned to the foreman. They said the fire systems were checked last week. Foreman's jaw clenched. They checked the list doesn't always mean it's fixed. Dana appeared from nowhere, phone against her ear. "Any injuries?" she asked, as if ordering coffee. Julian gestured. He pulled the kid out. "That guy," he pointed to Will. Dana's gaze barely flickered. "It was lucky no one died." She lowered the phone. "Have facilities send a report." Will stood by, brushing soot away. He folded his arms. Julian caught his expression, tired, precise, already thinking 6 steps ahead. Dana dismissed both with a glance. "Anyone can get lucky once." Julian's eyebrows tightened. He watched Will walk away, a question starting to form. "He's not who he says he is," someone murmured nearby. Julian filed that comment away, mind ticking. He'd seen burns before, he knew real from play. He had seen this before, 20 years ago. At the break room table 2 days later, Julian clicked through personnel records. Will Dempsey, references limited, background check partial, 6 previous gigs, nothing remarkable. But under contact, a scrambled number with too many digits, not matching any local exchange. Julian opened another window, military records database, reserved for critical clearances. He shouldn't have access, but sometimes files found their way open. No William Dempsey, but an M. Dempsey, special clearance, access to NSA cryptographic division 5 years back. Service record, commendations, discharge quiet but clean. He printed the page, hands trembling a bit. He tucked it under his notebook. At home, Iris sat on the floor, compass in her lap, arranging toy blocks into awkwardly aligned north-south grids. She looked up solemn. "She was mean to you. She needs a friend, Daddy." Will paused, dish midway to cupboard. "Maybe she does." "Why don't you give her the compass?" Iris asked, more profound than she guessed. "That's for finding lost things," Will replied. A yellow envelope stuck from the mailbox, final notice scribbled. Iris's school fee circled in red on the wall calendar. 8 days, deadlines like anchors weighted everything. Back on site, Dana's compliance officer arrived, clipboard in hand. "Corporate says you're behind schedule. Report." Will wiped sweat with his forearm. "Your client changed the spec 2 days ago. I followed it." The compliance officer didn't blink. "You're flagged as a payment risk." Julian stepped in from the scaffolding. "He's not the risk. Your wiring sub's delaying everything." A flash of recognition, Julian as ally now, his voice steadier. "I checked the records. Will's got a perfect safety log." The compliance officer shrugged, muttering about referrals. Will merely nodded, eyes direct. After the shift, Julian drew up beside Will, holding a folded printout behind his back. "You want to talk old lives?" Will's eyes flicked to the compass chain. "I'm just a guy pouring concrete." Julian didn't push. "Coffee after shift, my treat or the vending machine's treat." Will shook his head. "Keep the treat, take care of your own." Will walked away, stowing the printout in Julian's hand. No words exchanged, but understanding passed between them. The city churned and the background machinations tightened. Julian tapped a message out on his phone, eyes fixed on the worker-staffed board. "Keep the feed on Dempsey." The storm was only beginning. The day after the fire, Will's supervisor met him at the trailer door. "Morrow's office called. They want your security badge and hard hat now," he said, not meeting Will's eyes. Will accepted without argument. He peeled off his gloves, folded them together, placed them on the foreman's desk. On the walk home, his phone buzzed, unknown number. "Dempsey?" the woman's voice asked. "That's me." You're no longer permitted near Block E. Consider this a formal bar. He said nothing, letting silence answer. Your daughter's school sponsorship, also under review, might want to check your paperwork. His grip on the phone tightened. I'll check, thanks for the courtesy. At school, Iris noticed her lunch note missing. Another child pointed and snickered. The principal called Will that afternoon to inquire about overdue forms. Enrollment continues only if all requirements are met. At midday, Will sat on a bench outside the union office, thumbed a message to someone in his old contacts. Now, if possible. He waited without fidgeting. Julian found him in late afternoon, breath ragged from running. They're making you the scapegoats, the fire, the bad wiring, everything. Will nodded, that's their play. Julian pressed the printout back into Will's hand. You can't stop the machine by standing still. Will evenly, sometimes you don't have to, you just redirect the flow. Julian eyed him unsure. That night, a low black car waited outside Will's apartment. The driver wore a suit, didn't introduce himself. You called, he asked. Will replied, for her, not for me, 72 hours. No further words. Across town, at a high-level donor dinner, Dana sipped her wine, only half listening to board member chatter. A phone buzzed, subject contacted old associates, possible red flag. Dana replied, keep watch, seal all doors, nothing unexpected. Her world compressed, father on a ventilator, business papers threatening from every angle, and now, a labor crisis mounting. She stared at the skyline. Handle it, she ordered, voice level. She should not have made this her problem. The conference room seats 70, but only 30 filled them that morning. Dana called the session her quarterly vision reset, but everyone knew it was an emergency. The board watched as two men in security uniforms wheeled in a cart, fussing with cables. Dana's chair at the head, coffee, tablet, legal pad clean. The double doors opened unexpectedly. First Julian, then Will, cleaner than usual, collar stiff, compass chain just visible at his wrist, posture squared despite exhaustion. A murmur ran through the room. Someone whispered, that's the guy from the fire. Cameras clicked on, live streams flickered. Dana lifted her gaze. Why are you here? Julian, steady. You invited everyone who cares about consequences. A director rose, nervous. Ma'am, there's a situation. Security connected their laptop to the main screen. The room lights dimmed. The feed started. Footage from last week. Gray smoke, chaos, mother screaming, then Will, moving like calculation itself, jacket around the child, leading her from flame. Clarity inescapable. Dana asked, edges cracking, who let him in. Julian, the system recognized him. Clearance escalated by default. Dana to her assistant, terse, shut it down. Neve only shook her head. It's board protocol, this is the audit. The others watched, another pivot. The moment the child emerged from the smoke, the room stilled. Dana tried again. None of this is relevant. What's at risk here is. Will's voice deep, unwavering. Your child could have died. She jerked as if stung. You wanted a spectacle, here it is. Dana, fighting for command, hissed, are you threatening me? Will shook his head once. No, just a man doing his job. A director, uncertain, added, stocks are dropping, ma'am, news syndicate has footage. Phones vibrated in every pocket, real-time market graphs tumbling, Luxity stock in freefall, market freeze protocol automates. Dana tried to muster a final salvo. You think you know what it takes to save something, you have no idea what I've given up. Will, voice soft now, no one asked you to clean their shoes. She gripped the table, knuckles white, glared at Will, but no words would come. A heavy pause landed, thick as spent concrete. The assistant stared at the carpet. A senior board member tapped his silver pen 3 times. A young staffer's mouth hung open. Dana turned inward, words caught in the throat. Sometimes silence is the only confession. You wanted a spectacle, here it is. 6 months on, the sun threw angled light across breakfast counters and the city's cranes. At Willow Street School, lunch notes now appeared on notepaper shaped like compass points, a different direction each day, one for Iris, one for her friend whose home had burned. Julian had been promoted to site safety director, never using the cryptic file again, but keeping its lesson ready. Dana stepped down quietly after the audit, a terse line in the paper. Her father's obituary ran beside it. Willow Street's PTA established a scholarship, no press, just thanks. Iris, compass still bright on her chain, traced her finger over the north and grinned. "Daddy, do you miss fixing everything for everyone?" Will kneeled beside her, voice close. "No, kiddo, I just want to find what matters." She leaned into him, thumb on the spinning dial, both steady. Later, Will watched the city beyond their window, the skyline flickering past cranes and scaffolds. He had not become what he once was, but he had refused to remain less than he could be. The city learned to measure strength not by gloss and command, but by who shows up, when attention is elsewhere, when danger presses, when the calculus of risk meets the human sum. And sometimes, when the surface shatters and the spectacle fades, what remains isn't power but presence, the simple act of saying quietly, "I'm here." Will slipped the window further open, city air sifting over his face. Late spring light spilled amber above the rooftops, soft on the back of his hands as he rinsed out Iris's mug. In the next room she hummed absent-mindedly, sorting compass notes from a cigar box. He watched her, thinking about the year just past, smoke, laughter, sharp-edged mornings where he'd stood on ground as shifting and precarious as his fortunes. She called, "Daddy, remember the tall lady with the shiny shoes?" "I remember," he replied, drying his hands. His voice invited her to continue. "She forgets to smile, maybe she needs a compass too." Iris closed the box and eyed him, serious beyond her years. Will chuckled softly, a sound cut with memory. "Maybe she does, Peanut. Some folks get lost even with all the maps in the world." Iris considered this, twisting the dial on her chain. "I wrote her a note once, 'Don't be scared of North.' I left it in your lunchbox, but it came back." Will crouched, arms wide, and she ran to him, small hands clinging tight. "Never wasted," he said. "Kind words know how to find home." Downstairs, the old neighbor rapped at the door, list in one hand, reusable bag in the other. "Eggs on sale, William, but the store's too crowded for these hips," she called. He took the list easy. "Steal a few for me, will you?" she quipped, always rough with affection. Iris piped, "We can add some for the families at school too." She scribbled extra items, careful block letters. Will marveled how the smallest gestures had grown to fill the cramped world they now owned. Out in the city, Will watched the street fill, workers, mothers tugging children, men in heavy boots, private cars idling, the scaffolding silhouette against a blue bright as a new day. He, walked these sidewalks 100 times, each journey stitched with the weight of necessity and hope. Passing a fence where construction tape still fluttered, he ran into Julian, phone and notepad in hand, a complex geometry of meetings on his mind. "Morning, Will," Julian greeted him, voice lighter than months ago. "City, signing off certificates for your old block today. They want you to cut the ribbon." Will smirked, shaking his head. "I'd rather not have my picture in the trades." Julian pressed on, grinning, "Too late. The union folks want you up front. You're basically a legend now, and Iris has been invited. They said she can supervise protocols. So you're sunk." Iris tugged Will's sleeve. "Daddy, I can show them the compass." He relented, heart full. "All right, Peanut, protocols need the best compass." They joined the swelling crowd, reporters corralling parents, safety officials marking boundaries, city councilors fussing with sashes they'd only wear once. A child with a scarlet scarf ran up to Iris, grinning, "Do you really have a magic compass?" Iris nodded solemnly, handing it over. "You have to promise not to spin too fast or we'll all end up in the wrong place." Will laughed, the deep kind that shakes old ache loose. A dark sedan pulled up at the curb, silence blooming as Dana Morrow stepped out. Her hair had grown longer, less perfect, suit traded for loose navy slacks, walking shoes scuffed at the heel. No entourage, no clipboard, just herself, smaller without the titles. She paused at the fence, unsure. Julian noticed first, nudging Will. Will straightened. Give me a minute, he strode over. Dana's eyes traveled everywhere but his face. You're the man they wanted front and center, she said, her tone almost neutral. It's not about the man, Will answered quiet. It's about who shows up when it matters. She drew a breath that trembled only at the very end. I never thanked you for the child, for not making it worse. Will shrugged, a gesture that tried for ease and nearly achieved it. You did what you thought was right, so did I. For a moment, they stood in a silence not of accusation, but of old exhaustion. Dana said, I can't fix most of it. The audit the company, it just keeps moving. You don't have to fix everything, Miss Morrow, Will replied. Sometimes you just help the thing in front of you. She nodded, voice softer. Dana, please, I don't have to wear my father's name anymore. She hesitated, then added, your daughter, she's bright, never lose that. Will glanced back at Iris, playing with a knot of neighborhood kids, compass chain glinting. I won't. Quickly, as if unsure she'd permit herself, Dana said, I've been helping at the library. Financial literacy, case management, you'd be surprised how little most business schools teach you about real life. I don't have much, but it's honest, the way it should have been. Will offered a small bow of his head, respect in the gesture. Glad you found your way. A tiny laugh, self-mocking, escaped her. Hard to get lost with half the city watching for a mistake. Even harder when no one cares, Will countered, a glance at her, gentle, not pitying. Julian approached, the crowd beginning to cluster. They're about to start, he said, nodding in Dana's direction. Mayor even showed, and there's union brass. Dana stepped back from the front, melting into the periphery, no desire to linger in limelight. Will let her disappear, trusting her to the shadows she chose. Under a temporary arch, the safety director started the ceremony. Today, we dedicate the Willow Promenade, rebuilt safer, fairer together, in memory of those lost and in hope for all who come next. Applause broke out, shy but swelling. Iris was called up, compass swinging from her neck. The MC grinned, I think this belongs in the history case someday. Iris whispered to Will, can we keep it, Daddy? He knelt, it's already part of history, right around your neck. The ribbon snipped, paint glistening on new rails and planters. Children swarmed the path, racing to where playground swings shimmered in the sun. Julian clapped Will on the back. Not bad for a first-timer, you did more than you know. Will gazed at the path, alive with running feet, did what needed doing. Julian's smile faded a touch, turning thoughtful. You ever think about teaching? We could use someone who knows which corners can't be cut. Will shook his head, considering. Maybe, one day, for now, got a 6-year-old who needs notes that always point home. The two men watched a while, the city's motions stitched into the slow turning of the afternoon. On Sunday, Will and Iris walked to the river park, the bridge arching over a slow green flow. She tossed pebbles, each a wish, until her pockets were empty. Did you ever do something you thought was right but everyone got mad? She asked, voice carrying farther than she realized. All the time, he replied, stomach clenching with the memory of burning solvents, angry bosses, and the last conversation with Iris's mother. Her brow creased. What did you do? He crouched in the dappled sun, considering. I listened. I said I was sorry if I had to be, then I kept going forward until it felt like the world got bigger again. She pressed her palm to his cheek, comfort instinctive. Sometimes the world feels too big. He let out a careful breath. That's why we have each other. At dusk, as they crossed homeward, Will noticed Dana across the street, a library bag on her shoulder. She saw them, paused by the lamplight. Iris lifted a hand, waving little more than a finger, and Dana's nod in return was soft, unpracticed, somehow more real for its awkwardness. The city lit up, a pattern of windows and neon looping the world back onto itself. Will thought about all the pieces. A shoe wiped clean, a lunch note, a hand steady in the fire, moments small enough to lose unless held onto with deliberate care. He carried Iris up the stairs, mindful of knees that didn't always cooperate. She giggled, arms tight, and as he lay her in bed, she asked, Can you send north to the moon? He smiled, tucking the sheets. North is wherever you decide to look, maybe even the moon someday. Content, she pressed the compass to her chest. When I'm big, I'll come back and fix everything that's left. Will's throat caught at that, the relentless promise of love, of legacy unfinished. He left the door cracked, the silver wedge of hallway light guiding their nights. In the weeks that rolled on, life knitted itself back into routine. Will picked up work with the union, a safer, steadier slot, no shifty contractors, no vengeance in the air. He became the one the new guys asked, "Is this right?" And Will, careful, honest, would say, "Does it feel right to you?" He started keeping another kind of note, scribbled safety reminders, and do the hard thing quotes, a legacy for when Iris wanted to know him not as her father, but as the man he'd fought to become. Sometimes, on slower evenings, neighbors would gather in the foyer, complaints about pipes and landlords giving way to quiet stories. "That girl, she got a scholarship," someone would say, and a hush would settle, pride in the small victories that built a city worth working in. Dana's name slipped from headlines, replaced by new lords of finance, new scandals. But sometimes Will saw her at civic cleanup events, on benches with city youth, trading boardrooms for muddy jeans. He felt no triumph in her humility, only a recognition, survival wears many faces. Late one Friday, Will met Julian at a corner diner, coffee thick and bitter, pie on plates chipped by 100 years of heavy use. They talked about safety codes, new jobs, the price of milk. Julian looked up, shrewd. "You ever worry, Will, that when it mattered you went too far?" Will thought before answering. "I worry more about when I'm asked to do less than I know I should." "Doesn't hurt you?" Will shook his head, gaze steady. "Hurts less than hiding or letting someone else pay the price." Julian let the words settle. "You saved that child, you know. I mean, the only real reason you were there was the wrong list, the wrong assignment. Worlds full of mistakes that end up meaning something." Will finished his coffee, swirling the dregs. "Then let's try to make the right kind of mistakes when we can." Julian nodded, toast half mocking. "To the right kind of mistakes, then." Back home, Iris asked, "Can I take the compass to show and tell? Mrs. Lang says we all need to bring something that helps us be brave." "It's yours, Peanut. Take it wherever you want. I'll draw you a map just in case." She planted a quick kiss on his cheek, gratitude unfiltered. And so autumn settled in. The avenues turned orange with leaves, the skyline a scaffold of aspirations never quite finished. In their kitchen, Will and Iris kept putting excess on the wall calendar, not for debts or deadlines now, but for small happinesses. Kindnesses done was the new margin. Helped Eddie with math, brought soup to Mrs. Karen, turned north for Dad. At night sometimes Will walk the block, checking locks for neighbors, picking up stray flyers, scraping old paint from the entry stoop. Each time he paused at the edge of the lot where the old fire happened. Grass grew wild there now, no new project, just a flatness waiting to be reclaimed. He closed his eyes, breathing, letting memory turn gentle around the edges. He thought about the hard edges of the world, urgent calls, children's screams, orders taking the place of apology. About how a spectacle is just the surface, but presence runs deep. One Saturday, Dana found him at the playground edge. Her hands, clean, unmanicured, clutched a clipboard heavy with grant applications. "I wanted your advice," she said, awkward. Will eyed the crowd of children, Iris yelping at the top of the slide. "I don't know much about grants." She shrugged, exhaling. "Not about paperwork, about odds, about doing what matters even if it," she trailed off, seeking the words. "Even if it costs," Will finished quietly. She nodded. He mulled a moment, then offered, "Odds don't matter, just make sure the cost is worth paying, for you and for everyone caught in it." Her gaze traced the outlines of parents, teachers, city workers. "I'm scared I'll wreck it again." Will gave a small smile. "If you care, you already changed the outcome, just show up, no mask, no script." Dana looked at him almost gratefully. "My father built walls and hid behind them, I'm trying not to." Will gestured to the playground. "Start by building swings, people need a reason to stay, not a reason to go." For a while they stood together, silent but not uncomfortable. The wind tangled her hair, and for the first time she let it be messy. As Dana walked away, Iris ran up, cheeks flushed, compass hanging from a sticky hand. "Daddy, was that the lady from before?" she whispered, voice curious but not afraid. "Yes," Will said. "She doesn't look lost anymore." "No," Will agreed, watching Dana disappear into the city's arms. She found north. On the ride home, Iris fell asleep, compass still clutched in her palm. Will watched her dream, face furrowed with tiny adventures. He knew hard times would return, but he also knew they faced them together, turning toward whatever good lay just ahead. And as the evening sky faded to memory, Will sat at the window, watching lights flicker on through the city's bones. He set pen to notepaper, drafting one last message in a long line of lunchbox notes. "Dear Iris, north isn't just a direction, it's the sum of every step we take toward each other. Keep going forward. Love, Dad." From his window, he watched as a single city block, once marked by fire, faded into shadow and then, slowly, into the safe, sturdy dark. And in the hush before sleep, he understood at last the quiet presence of those who endure and the grace of those who stay.